Astro Bot as a franchise feels like an anomaly. When you've been playing video games long enough, it's easy to become cynical because you think you've seen it all. Yet the first time playing Astro's rescue mission for the PS4 VR was quite mind-blowing, and I was not alone in comparing it to the feeling of the first time playing a 3D sandbox game like Mario 64 back in the day, as Astro featured a whole new dimension of gameplay. Admittedly, my time with a few showcase levels didn't convince me to buy a VR set, as it still felt too niche and cumbersome to manage at home, but it left me hoping that perhaps, even with more traditional means, the Astro IP could provide the same surprise in a more accessible way. It did so somewhat with the pre-installed Astro's Playroom on PS5, which fully embraced the new features of the controller. But let's not beat around the bush, despite its high quality, it still felt like a tech demo. But then followed a full-fledged release called Astro Bot. And surprisingly enough, it delivered almost everything you could hope for. There are many things you could attempt to be snarky or cynical about, but ultimately you'd look like a tryhard. When I started Astro Bot, I thought I knew what was going on. The save files are PS1 memory cards, social media was flooded with cameo appearances, and after starting the game, it had the exact look and feel of Playroom. Thinking this must be more of the same, but with nostalgic references to distract from that fact. Well, that impression doesn't last long. Not often are there games that are this jam-packed with gameplay ideas. Over the course of 7 to 9 hours, it often feels like no minute is the same, with a plethora of creative set pieces, power-ups, and over-the-top boss fights, and almost no elements repeating themselves. What's particularly striking is that the game doesn't waste time. Where other games slowly build up mechanics or hold some features back for later, Astro goes crazy with an idea straight from the start. For example, when Astro transforms into a metal ball to traverse spiky floors and tunnels, the game doesn't stop there. In the same level, you'll quickly be crushing other metal objects, catapult Astro as a golf ball, make much more devastating jumps on trampolines, or clog up volcanoes and giant vacuum cleaners. And then the next level is something else entirely. Astro's moveset is no competition for the flexible acrobatics of Mario, but the game makes up for it by fully embracing the functions of the PS5, where the sophisticated rumble, shoulder button rebounds, and sound effects within the controller react differently to different situations. Rolling over hard ground literally feels different to traversing sands. Ripping a switch out of the ground with the rocket chicken literally feels different to shooting through glass with the rocket dog. It's hard to describe in a video just how satisfying these haptic features are while punching through Lego blocks or pulling a giant zipper. Astro fulfills one of the most important aspects of a platformer, which is to make the mere act of moving around and interacting with the world engaging. The game may try a little too hard to be quirky and cute, and I'm not the biggest fan of the sterile aesthetic where everything organic is made out of plastic or metal similar to Mega Man. To me, the overall identity of this Astro world could be stronger, but to be fair, if I played this as a child, I might just look at it the same way I now fondly look at the self-referential world building of 90s platformers. Considering how hard the game tries to be cheeky, it's hard not to be at least a little amused. Now, when it comes to references similar to something like Mario Odyssey or Sonic Mania, they are merely a nice icing on the cake. I certainly chuckled at some of the deep cuts that the game offers for long-time gamers, and if the nostalgia bait sold a few more copies, keep going with that. But to be clear, if you do not recognize a single reference in this game, it doesn't change anything. The majority of references is relegated to the costumes worn by some of the level collectibles, which would still work the same way without the cosplay. They are in no way the main appeal, which is still the platforming. Astro Bot is not the Family Guy of games. Initially, I wanted to note that the game followed the Mario style of 3D platforming, where obstacles take a back seat in favor of wacky gameplay features, where the surprise moment of Mario turning into a bee or something is more important than a difficult platforming challenge, which isn't a bad thing, but just not my preferred style. In the case of Astro Bot, it would be the wonder of watching this mascot transform into a giant sponge, or fighting the big Donkey Kong fight that Nintendo never dared to make. However, Astro Bot isn't just about the gimmicks. Beyond the main levels are quite a few parkours that are all about a fast-paced platforming challenge. And you actually need to finish at least a few, since the final boss requires around 2/3 of all collectibles. Also, the supposedly short playtime of 7 hours for veterans isn't a negative either. It's harder to make a game tight and still feel like a full adventure at this length, and Astro does so by not wasting any time to introduce a higher amount of ideas than many games that are 3 or 4 times longer, which left me with a game with nothing to realistically complain about, despite my lofty expectations for the IP. It almost felt symbolic that such a creative and tightly focused game was released in 2024, a year when many studios were shut down and big publishers, including Sony, released multiple flops that were all about chasing trends and nickel and diming consumers, the opposite of Astro Bot.